Hey, this is Aria, and in this tutorial, we're going to be mixing a few different simulations together to create this scene. So our main focus will be the simulations, but I'll also show you how I finish the scene as well. I'm just going to go through that a lot quicker in this tutorial just for the sake of time. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and you can also become a member of my Patreon page to get the file for this animation, as well as some other cool stuff. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so open up a new scene in Blender and we can just select the light in the camera and hit delete. Then since we are using the default cube, we can leave it, but for now we're just gonna hide it. Then the first thing we want to create is our conveyor belt. And there's some great tutorials on YouTube on how to do this, so I'll leave a link in the description to the method that I used. So Shift A, mesh, and we're gonna click cylinder. Next, we just want to rotate this onto its side, so hit R, Y to lock to the Y, and then we'll type in 90. Then we just want to scale this, so we're going to type in S to scale and type in 1.75. Then we just want to scale on the X, so I'm just going to come around to the side, hit S to scale X, and then type in 2.5. Then if we were to subdivide this, it would not look very good, so we're just going to add a bit more geometry. So we can hit Tab to go into edit mode, and then we're going to hold Control, hit R, and you'll see that it brings up this guide, so that we're going to click and drag this all the way over to the edge. Then we'll do it one more time, Control R, click, and drag this to the edge. Then we just want to quickly inset the end caps here, so let's hold Alt, then just click one of the edges. Next hit I, and we can just drag our mouse in, click, then we'll hit I again, and do the same thing 2 more times. Then we'll come around to this side here, and we'll do the same thing, so Alt, click, I, and bring your mouse in, click, then 2 more times. Then we can just hit Tab to go back into object mode and just head back around to the front here. Right click, shade smooth, then just head over to the modifiers, click here, open up this menu, and we're going to add a subdivision surface and set these both to 2. Now we can just bring this up, so we'll just zoom out and hit G and Z, and this doesn't matter how far you bring this up, we just want to give room for the rest of our scene. Then we'll just bring it over a little bit and set it in place. Now we want to duplicate this, but before we do that, we're just going to head over to the physics properties and add a collision. Then the only thing we need to do is come down here and set the friction to 80, which will just help when we add our cloth. Okay, so now we need to duplicate this, so we're going to make sure this is selected, hold Shift D, then hit Y, and you can type in 20. Then we just want to bring this up, so G, Z, and type in 3. So now we're going to use a cloth simulation to finish our conveyor belt. So hit Shift A, and we're going to go to Mesh, Cube. Then we need to just bring this up into the center and click. Then we just want to scale this on the Y, so S, Y, and then we're just going to bring this out just until it's past both edges. So again, you can just move this GY just to bring this over, just so that it's even on both sides. Then we can rotate this by hitting R, X, and we can just rotate this till it's about the same angle. Then G, Z, and you'll see that it's going down on the global Z, so if you hit Z again, it will switch to the object coordinates. Then just bring this down. Okay, so that's close enough. Now we can just scale this. So first we'll do the Z, so S, Z, and let's hit the Z 2 times to activate the object coordinates. Then just drag your mouse until it's covering our cylinders. You can see that it's a bit off, so let's hit G, Y, and Y again. Then we can just bring this over slightly. That's looking pretty good. You can move this a little bit more if you want. G, Z, Z, and click. Then finally we just want to scale it on our X-axis, so let's hit S, X, and this is the easiest one. We just need to bring it to almost the width. Then click. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is get rid of a couple of these faces. So let's hit Tab to go into edit mode. Then you just want to make sure that you're on face select mode by either clicking here or hitting 3 on your keyboard. Then just select this face, delete, and faces. Next, just select the back face as well, delete, and faces. Then since we're going to turn this into a cloth, we want to make sure that there's more subdivisions. So same thing as before, hold Control R to bring up this guide, and you can just click. Then just hit escape just so that it stays in the center. Bring your mouse down here and open up this menu and set the number of cuts to 25. Then same for the bottom, Control R, and set this to 25. Then we can just come to the side here, Control R, click, escape to set it in place, and we'll set these to 5. Control R, click, and set this to 5 as well. Then that's all we need to do. Okay, so hit tab to go back into object mode. Then we just want to make sure that we're in the physics properties and go up here and click cloth. So we need to go back to frame 1. Then the only thing we need to do for our cloth properties is scroll all the way down to the bottom, open up the shape, then we'll set our shrinking factor to 0.3. Now if we just hit play, you can see that our simulation shrinks around our cylinders, which is great. So I'm just going to let this play just till it's a little bit calm. And when you've got a steady frame, you can just head over to the modifiers properties. Then under the cloth settings here, click this and click apply. Now if we go back to frame 1, our cloth simulation is gone, but we've got a nice starting frame. So then back over to the physics properties, click on the belt and we can add a new cloth simulation. Again, we can just scroll all the way to the bottom and we're just going to add 0.2 to the shrinking factor. Now if we hit play, you'll see that it's looking good. It's obviously gotten a little bit smaller. So if we go back to frame 1, we can just scale this a bit. So hit S, X, and we can just scale this out. That way when we hit play, it won't shrink too much. Okay, so let's make this look a little bit nicer. So right click, shade smooth. Then we want to make sure that we add some subdivisions as well. So head over to the modifiers properties, click here, and we're going to add a subdivision surface and set this to 2. That way once we animate this, we won't have any of our geometries crashing through. Okay, so we've got our cloth all ready to go. All we need to do now is animate our cylinders. So click the cylinder, Control A, and we'll click all transforms. After we do that, our pivot point kind of jumps down to the world origin. So we want to right click, set origin and origin to geometry. That way when we rotate our object, it will rotate on the center of itself as opposed to rotating on this point here. The same with the other one here. Click, Control A, transforms, right click, and origin to geometry. Awesome, so now we're just going to click on either one of these, and now that we've reset our transforms, we want to rotate this on the X. So right and insert a single keyframe, then we want to go to the end of our animation. So we're going to set ours to 500 today. Then we can just drag this over just so we can see our full timeline. Click this to go to the final frame, and don't worry about this, this is just because we haven't baked our simulation. So now we just want to set these values to something like 1200. Insert a keyframe, and we'll do the same with the other one. Now if we head back to frame 1 and hit play, our simulation will be working. It's hard to see, so let's just turn on our wireframe shading for the moment, and if I hit play, you can see that now it's working correctly. And that's it for our cloth simulation. So I'm just going to head back to smooth shading, and since everything is working, click on the cloth one more time, head over to the physics properties, and now we can bake our simulation. So in your cloth properties, just scroll all the way down until you see the cache. Let's set this to 500 to match our animation just so it doesn't stop early. And then this bake should only take about 30 seconds to a minute. Awesome, so if I just quickly throw on the wireframe, you can see now that if I scroll through, our simulation is complete. So now we can jump around and we won't get any errors. Now we can move on to adding our rigid body chain with our magnet. So Shift A, Mesh, and this time we'll click Torus. Then just hit the decimal key on your numpad just to orbit into our object. Right click and shade smooth. Now we just want to rotate this, so R, Y, and type in 90. Hit tab to go into edit mode, and hit 1 on your keyboard to go into vertex selection, or click here. This is on the Blender Guru tutorials, and it's a great way to create a rigid body chain, so we're just going to use that method, but I'll throw the link in the description. So we just want to select half of our vertices here, so just click away, Alt and click just to select the entire loop. Then hold Control, and we're going to hit the plus button until we've got half of our vertices selected. Then we just want to move these up by hitting G, Z, and just bring this up. Then we can hit Tab to go back into Objects mode. Our pivot point is a bit off-centered, so Control A, and reset all the transforms. Then right-click, set Origin to Geometry. Okay, so now we can just zoom out, hit G and Z just to bring this straight up, then G, Y, and we'll just bring this over to somewhere there. So that's a little bit big, so we'll just hit S to scale and type in 0.75. Then before we start duplicating, I want to add our physics just so we don't have to do the extra step. So again, just make sure that you're in the physics properties and then click rigid body. We can change the mass to 10. And the most important part is to change this to mesh. This is just the way that it does its calculations. So if you set it to mesh, Blender will calculate this based on the mesh that we provided. Okay, so now we can duplicate. So Shift D, then hit Z just to lock to the Z axis, and we'll just bring this up until they're very close to each other. Then R to rotate Z and type in 90. Then we can just select both of the links. Shift D, Z, and we'll just bring this up. So hold Shift and hit R, and it will just repeat our last action. I'm just going to leave it to that for now. For this tutorial, I just want to keep things as light as possible. If we hit play, you can see our chain will just start falling. So what we need to do is click this top link. Then we can just quickly switch these. So we're going to uncheck dynamic so that it doesn't move. But we also want to check animated so that we can use this as our animation point. Now if you hit play, you'll see that our chain falls and it just starts to grab onto one another. Next we'll hit Shift A, mesh, and we'll add a cylinder. Then again GZ just to bring this straight up, and GY just to bring it over. Then S to scale, Shift Z, and we can just drag our mouse till this is a lot larger. And we can just bring this up on the Z and scale it as well. Just add some supporting geometry, so edit mode, Control R, and we'll just add a loop cut, Control R, then Alt click, hit I, and we'll just drag in some extra faces. One more time here. And that should be great. Okay, so tab back into object mode, right click, shade smooth, modifiers, click here, and subdivision surface. 2 or 3 should work just fine as well. Then we want our magnet to stay with our chains, so make sure you've got the magnet part selected, and then shift click this bottom link, Control P, then we'll select our second option here to pair them together. And now if we hit play, you can see that it's looking great. Let's animate this. So click here, then we're on frame 1, so we're going to hit I and set a location keyframe. Then what you can do is go to say frame 170, GY, and then we'll just bring this over slightly. Right click and insert keyframe. Now if I was to play that, you'll see that our animation will start working and it'll start our movement. It stops abruptly, so basically what that is our simulation isn't long enough, so we're going to click Scene Properties, open the Rigid Body World, Cache, and we're going to set this to 500. Then we're going to go to around frame 360 or so, hit G, Z, and I'm just going to bring this down by maybe about 20 or so. Click and make sure you add a keyframe. Head back, and then I'm just going to let this play through. It crashes a little bit into here, so all we need to do is just grab this keyframe here. We can just drag it forward a little bit to say by about 30 frames. Then if we were to hit play again, you'll see now that this is going to drop a little bit quicker and it should avoid this here. I am noticing this isn't going quite as low as we want, so I'm just going to hit G, Z, and just bring it down maybe another 5, and then replace the keyframe. Awesome, that's looking really good. So once we've reached the bottom, basically we just want this to start coming across, so you can let it go all the way to like 440 or something like that. Then we just want to move this over slightly, so G, Y, and we'll just bring this over a little bit. Then we can add a new keyframe. And since we know that this doesn't interfere at this point, we can just bake our simulation. So I'm just going to head back to frame 1 and click bake, and this should be a super fast bake. Now we can scrub through as well and just see what our simulation is looking like. So back to frame 1, and now that we've got the structure of our magnet complete, we need to actually make our magnetic force. So Shift A, and there's a bunch of ways to do this, but in my case I just want to use a force just because I found it to be the most simple for this simulation. GZ, just bring this up, then GY, and we'll just bring this into the center. Then we want to make this stay with our magnet, so make sure the field is selected, then shift select the magnet, Control P, and keep transform. By the way, things are starting to get a little bit complicated up here, so I'm just going to clean it up a bit by clicking the scene collection and adding a new collection. Then I'm going to select this torus and scroll all the way down, shift select, then drag this into collection 2. Now if we open up our top torus, you'll see that this is missing, so we just want to grab our cylinder 2 and drag it into here as well. Then if we open this up, you'll see the field is missing as well, so drag and drop this into collection 2 and everything should be together now. Make sure you're saving if you haven't done that already. So basically what we want is our magnet to activate once our magnet is down here a bit lower. So we're going to go to about frame 310 or something like that. Head over to the physics properties. Set this to 0 and add a keyframe. Any time before this, we won't have any effect at all. Then you just want to move forward 4 or 5 frames. And since we want this to act like a magnet, instead of adding a positive value, we're going to add a negative value of 25. Then click here to set a new keyframe. Okay, so now that we've got our magnet set up, we can start finishing the rest of our scene. By the way, if you see this sort of glitching or separating from this, sometimes you can see there that it just sort of pops out of the way. Then when I go back to frame 1, it's kind of sitting out here, but if you just click this again, you'll see that it goes back into place. Let's add a couple more objects here. So Shift A, Mesh, and we're going to add a plane. S to scale and type in 4. Then we want to scale this just to be a bit longer, so S, Y, and we'll type in 4 again. Now we just want to bring this up and over. Then rotate it, so R, X, and we can just drag this till it's got a nice angle. Bring this down a bit and back over, and that should be good. Okay, so let's make our object a little bit more curved. So Tab to go into edit mode, Control R, and we're going to add 2 loop cuts. Then we just want to add one going across, so click here, escape, and then we can change this to 15. Now if we just Alt and click this edge and Shift click this edge here, we can bring these out. So if we hit G to move and Z, you can see that Blender wants to use the global axis, but if we hit Z one more time, we can go into the object orientation, and since we haven't reset our transforms, this is the Z axis for our ramp. And then we just want to drag the mouse out a little bit. Then Tab to go back into edit mode, right click, shade smooth, head over to the modifiers, click here, and we're going to add a subdivision surface and set this to 2. Next we want this to curves, so we can head over to the modifiers again, then select simple to form, choose bend as our option, and we do need to reset our transforms again, so Control A, click all transforms, then to go back to where it was before, we want to right click, set origin to geometry. Now you can just set this in place, maybe you want to rotate it just a little bit and scale it just till you're happy, and keep in mind that the more of an angle you have, the easier this will be for you. And then the very final thing that we want to do is just add some depth, so we're going to go into modifiers and select solidify. Click here, and then we just want to drag this above our subdivision. Then we can set this to 0.4. Then I'm also going to bring the deform up as well. We've got one more object to add, so Shift A, Mesh, and we're going to go to Circle. Then we can just tab to go into Edit mode. Then we just need to extrude, so E, Z, and drag your mouse up. Then S to scale. Click, then again E, Z, S to scale. Then one more time E, Z, and just scale this slightly. Then hit Tab to go back into Object mode. Right click, Shade Smooth. Then this is a little bit small, so we'll just hit S and we can scale this a little bit larger. Control A, set origin to geometry. Bring this down a bit by hitting G and Z, and we're just going to leave it here for the moment. Then we can always change this later if we need to. So head over to the modifiers, click solidify, then we can set this to something like 0.3. Click here and add a subdivision surface. In the modifiers, I'm going to click here and click apply. So now we can just zoom out. And we're pretty much ready to add our cubes. So just before we do that, we're going to turn all of these into collision objects. So first let's click the magnet, physics properties, and click collision. For now we can just leave these to default, but we may need to change them later. Click on the conveyor belt. Then we can just close down our cloth settings since we're done with those. And click collision. Then we can click on our ramp, collision as well. Let's just set the friction to 0. Then finally we can click the bowl and collision. I also like to set this damping to 0.5 just so that when our cube goes inside it doesn't fall out. Then again, make sure that you're saving. And now it's finally time to bring our cube back. So let's just head up here and unhide our default cube. Then we can just rename this soft body just so that we don't get too confused at which is which. If you want to rename this belt, and feel free to name your other objects as well. Okay, so select the soft body, S and 2 to scale, G Z, then GY to bring it over. Next we want to subdivide, so hit tab to go into edit mode again. Right click and click subdivide, and we're just going to do that 2 times. Then back into object mode, right click, shade smooth, and we're going to add some subdivision surface. So modifiers and subdivision surface of 2. Then finally we can add our physics, so let's just head down to the physics properties and click soft body. Then we want to uncheck goal and open up our edge settings. We're going to change these all to 0.8, so just click and drag. Then type in 0.8. Then we want to add stiffness and self-collision. So now is a good time to save, and I'm going to hit play and see how everything is looking. Okay, so first things first, we need to definitely increase our cache. So back to the soft body, and let's open up our cache and set this to 500. Then we'll just go to frame 1. I can already tell that this is moving way too slow, so open our simulation option and let's set this to something like 2.5 for now. And then we can hit play again. What I like to do now too, just to time the simulation properly, is you just want to see where this is going to fall. Then just click on our bowl and we're just going to hit GY and we just move this over a little bit. Hit I and we'll set a location keyframe. Then we can head back to frame 1 and we're just going to hit GY and we can just bring this back just so we get a bit of a running start. I and set a new location keyframe and hit play. Then after we catch the soft body, we want to move over. So let's go to somewhere like frame 340. Click on our bowl again and we can hit GY just to bring this over. Then we just want to go just a little bit past just because this is going to be swinging slightly. So right click and insert a keyframe. Okay, good. So not that we want this to happen, but you can see that we're having a little bit of a problem here. So I found the best way is to actually slow the simulation down. So just go back to just before our object hits the bowl. Make sure you're in the soft body properties. Then let's set a keyframe for the speed. Just move ahead maybe 2 frames. And we're going to set the speed to 1 and set a new keyframe. Now if we head back to frame 1, I'll just hit play. And you can see that that's working a lot better now. So I'm just going to let this play through and just see how our magnet performs. Just keep in mind that this is going to be the most time consuming part of the tutorial. And of course things decided to work correctly. So I was hoping that we would have a couple issues here, but it seems like we're good. But what might happen is if this gets stuck in here or it gets stuck on here, something like that. Typically what I do to fix that is I would just click here and just change this to something like 0.1. Just basically to reset it. Then if you're really having a lot of problems with your cube sticking or not moving correctly or getting stuck to one of these things, I was hoping it would happen in this tutorial, but it seems to be working correctly. So if it does screw up, what you can do is I make sure to go back to frame 1 and all I do is go to the collision here and I uncheck and check it again. Then you can do the same for this as well. The ramp and anything with a collision. Then select the cube. Just to re-input one of your values here, it can be the exact same value. I found that with Blender sometimes it doesn't cache everything correctly, so the best way to get it to work is to sort of start fresh by re-adding all your collisions. Save one more time and we'll hit bake. Okay, so our simulation is complete. Just make sure to save. Awesome, so now it's time to finish the scene. But since we spent a lot of time on these simulations, I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this. So first let's start with this. Go to shading and make sure you've got the cube selected. I'm just going to close these super quick just so that there's more room for everyone to see. Click new. Oh, before we do that, we just want to add in an HDRI. So just head over, make sure you're in the world properties. Then we'll click here and add an environment texture and click open. Find an HDRI on your computer. I'll throw the link in the description for the one I'm using. Then click open. Now if we turn on our render preview, You can see that we've got a little bit of light but no materials. Let's head over to the render's properties, and if I open up film and uncheck transparent, you'll see that our background is showing, which isn't what we want, but we do want something to be back there. So in the shading tab, you can click here and go to world and duplicate our background. Shift A and search for mix shader and add these two together. Then we'll change the strength of our HDR to 0.1 and the strength of our color to 0.5. Then click here and we're going to add a dark blue. Shift A and search for light. Select a light path. Then you're just going to take your first output and input it into the factor of the mix shader. Then I just rotated mine a bit, so Control T to use the Node Wrangler add-on and set the Z rotation to 60. Then we're good to go, so we can head back into the object by clicking here and selecting object. Then we can just bring this over and we're going to search for an emission shader. Again, Shift A to search for mix shader and click this here. Then we'll bring this to the bottom. We're going to set our strength to 500 and we're going to select a color. Okay, so just in our main properties here, we can bring our roughness down and select a blue color as well. And add a clear coat. Then to separate these, what we can do is hit Shift A and search for layer weight. Plug it into the factor. Click here and type in 0.1. And now you see that we've just got this sort of glowing edge to our cube. Add in a color ramp as well. You can use this to tweak how much or how little your effect will show up. Select the magnet, click new, and we're just going to add a quick metallic. So metallic to full and roughness down. Then to just quickly add that same material to our chain, we can just make sure this is selected. Shift and then we'll drag and select all of our chains. Then go to object, make links, and select material. Click the conveyor, click new, and instead of using the principled, we're going to search for an emission. Select a blue color and set this to 250. By the way, since we're adding materials, let's just add some EEVEE settings. So let's add ambient occlusion, bloom, which we can open up and set to around 0.002. We can also add screen space reflections and refractions. Then what I did to kind of break this up a bit just so you could see the movement was if you hit tab and go into edit mode, hit A to select everything and make sure that we're on face select. Then if you go to select, pick this option here, which is check or deselect. Just turn off the preview for now. You can see that we've got every other face selected. Then head over to the materials up to the top and we'll click this plus symbol just to add a new material. Click assign to add all of these. Then we can select new, change this to gray, and bring our transmission all the way up. Head back into our render preview, hit tab, and now you can see that we've got this effect here. Click our cylinders here, then we can just do the same thing, so get rid of the principled, emission, 250, and let's set this to blue. Then we'll just remember that this is material 4, click here, click this, and we'll select material 4. You'll probably also notice that we're getting a lot cooler effects with our cube as well. Click on the ramp, click new, and this one's just going to be a dark gray, metallic all the way up, and roughness all the way down. Material 5, so we can click the cup and just select material 5. Then I added a background for mine, so Shift A, mesh, and cube. Then you just want to make sure that you add some loop cuts to this cube until you've got something like this shape here. Shade smooth, and you can of course add a subdivision surface as well. Then for the material for this, it's super easy again, so just click new, change this to something blue, then Shift A and search for bump. Shift A again and search for brick. Then you want to plug the color into the roughness and the color into the height of the bump. Feel free to play with this, but I'm just going to give you the exact settings that I use. So 15, 0.01, 1.8 for the brick width, and that should be good. Now let's add some lights. So Shift A, light, point. Make sure your overlay's on just so we can see. Bring this up and over. Then just head over to light properties. Bring the radius up. Set the power quite high to something like 50,000, and we want to set this to, again, a blue color. Then we can duplicate this by hitting Shift D, Y, and we'll just bring this over and down. Then we just want to set this to something like orange, which will give us this nice mixing of colors. So for the rest of this, I'm just going to do a quick time lapse just to get the last few items in, but this is pretty much all you need to know. Everything else that I added is just cosmetic. Okay, and then once you've got everything you want for your materials and stuff, the final thing that you want to do is just add some indirect lighting. So Shift A, Light Probe, Reflection Cube Map, and then we'll just head over to the properties and change this to Box. Then we can hit S to scale, and we just want to make sure that the inner cube is within our scene and the outer is outside. Then we can head over to the render properties, head all the way down to indirect lighting and hit bake. And you can see that we get a lot more really nice reflections in there. If we head back to the layout and turn on our render preview, turn off our overlays. Again, if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. And if you're able to support me even further, you can become a member of my Patreon page, where you'll get a free download of the animation file I use for my simulation, as well as the other ones that you see on my channel. Okay, I hope to see you soon. Bye!